Hello, everyone. My name is Paige Quinton. Today, I will be talking about understanding chaining procedures. So, we'll start off with what is a chaining procedure. So, a chaining procedure is a behavior chain. It's linked to a sequence of responses leading to a terminal outcome. Each response produces a stimulus change that functions as conditioned reinforcement for that response and as an SD for the next response in the chain. Reinforcement for that last response in a chain maintains the reinforcing effectiveness of the stimulus changes produced by all previous responses in the chain. So I always like to kind of put it in simpler terms as well. So chaining continued, it is an instructional strategy where the behavior chain or the task is broken down into steps. Then each step is taught within the sequence. So first, you need to create a task analysis of the behavior chain that's being taught. The first step in creating a task analysis will be identifying the task that's being analyzed. This can be any task from making your bed, tying your shoe, and the example I will be diving deep into today is hand washing. And then you need to break down the behavior into steps. So the easiest way to do this is to watch someone do it or just to do it yourself. Why is chaining used? A new behavior chains are taught to people for several reasons. First, an important educational aspect of programs for students with developmental disabilities, novice learners, and people kind of like in independent living skills. These skills help develop their learner functions more effectively in different environments and eventually can complete these activities without direct adult supervision. Complex behaviors that are developed with chaining procedures allow individuals to function more independently. So what is a task analysis? The process of analyzing a behavioral chain by breaking it down into its individual stimulus response components is a task analysis. A task analysis involves breaking a complex task into smaller, teachable units, the product of which is a series of ordered steps or tasks. And a task analysis should be individualized according to the age, skill level, and prior experience of the learner. So as a teacher, or a lot of us in this course have or are registered behavioral technicians, you know, each student, each learner, each person is different. So each task analysis might have to be different for each person that you happen to be teaching this new skill to. Behavior chaining methods. There are 3 different types of chaining which can be used, and there are forward chaining, backward chaining, and total task chaining. Not to get that confused with the task analysis. So first, we're going to dive deep into forward chaining. In forward chaining, the behaviors identified in the task analysis are taught in the natural occurring order. Specifically, reinforcement is delivered when the predetermined criteriation of the performance of the first behavior in the sequence is achieved. Thereafter, reinforcement is delivered upon completion of steps 1 and 2, and each succeeding step requires cumulative performance of all previous steps in the correct order. So basically, forward chaining is taught beginning with the first step. For example, if being taught to wash hands, turning on water is the first step taught. The first step is taught most at least prompting, fading until done independently. Throughout learning, every other step in the chain is prompted. When the first step is mastered, move on to the second, then the third, then the fourth, then so on. The advantages of forward chaining can be behavior momentum can be utilized. Typically, the first step in a chain is the simplest or the easiest to remember. So that could be a huge advantage. Forward chaining is also the easiest to teach others how to implement. So, for example, if you're a BCBA or a teacher trying to explain how an ABA therapist or families can run this chaining for their learner, forward chaining is typically the easiest to explain. Each response in the behavior chain is being paired with a reinforcer while being taught. The disadvantages of a forward chaining procedure can be that the learner does not have contact with a natural reinforcer for completing the step. So, for example, for washing hands, the natural reinforcer is having clean hands. The learner does not have immediate contact with this natural reinforcer. Instead, they're being prompted throughout the rest of the chain. So here's the example I will be really dissecting throughout this PowerPoint here, my video. We're going to be diving deep into washing hands. So this is the perfect example of a task analysis for washing hands. As you can see, step 1, turn on the water. Step 2, wet your hands. Step 3, turn off the water. Step 4, get the soap. 5, wash and scrub for 20 seconds. Step 6, turn on the water and rinse off the soap. 7, dry your hands with a paper towel. 8, turn off the water with a paper towel. And 9, throw the paper towel in the trash. As you can see here, I took a video with one of my students. I did have pre-approved consent to add them in this video, and this is forward chaining in action. Okay, so as you can see, I am prompting least to most the first step, which is turning on the water. Then I am full physically helping the student or client complete the rest of the chaining. Step 2, get soap. Step 3, scrub hands for 20 seconds. The next step, turn on water, rinse hands, get the paper towel, turn off the water with the paper towel, dry hands, and then throw away. Immediately after this task is completed, you will provide the reinforcer, which in this case was not in the video, but was an edible gummy. Backwards chaining is the next chaining procedure that we're going to go over. With backwards chaining, you will use prompting and fading to teach the last behavior in the chain first. So it's basically the opposite of forward chaining. By starting with the last behavior in the chain, the learner completes the chain on every learning trial. Once the last behavior is mastered, you teach the next to last behavior. Once behavior is mastered and the learner engages in the last 2 behaviors of the chain without any prompts, the next behavior is taught. This continues until the learner can exhibit the whole chain of behaviors when presented with the first descriptive stimulus without any prompts. In more simpler terms, in backwards chaining, the behavior is taught beginning with the last step. For example, when washing hands, throw paper towel away is taught last. The last step is taught least to most prompted until mastered. During this time, all other steps are prompted. And when the last step is completed, move to second to last, third to last, and so on. The disadvantages to backwards chaining is some may say that mastery might take longer to reach than forward chaining. In my personal experiences as a registered behavioral technician, I haven't seen a big disadvantage in this, but I did see some people say that. But advantages are it allows the individual to experience results quicker, such as reaching the end of the chain and accessing natural reinforcement. So this might help it be a little bit easier. And this is the same exact task analysis as before, but I put the arrow at the bottom to show that's the step that we're teaching independently first. So here is my example of backwards chaining in action. As you can see, I am full physically prompting the student through every step. I won't go over them this time since I went over them last time. And for the last step, which is throwing the paper towel away, you can see that I point to the trash can and the client independently does so. Finally, the last chaining procedure I'm going to go over in this video is total task chaining. So total task chaining is sometimes also called total task presentation or whole task presentation. Is a variation of forward chaining in which the learner receives training on each step in the task analysis during every session. The trainer provides assistance for any steps the learner is unable to perform independently, and the chain is trained until the learner is able to perform all the behaviors in the sequence. Depending on the complexity of the chain, the learner's repertoire and available resources, physical assistance, and or graduated guidance may be incorporated. So continued, the teacher, so this may be the therapist, the parent, the BCBA, walks the client through each step, prompting as necessary, at least to most prompting. This is what most teachers do naturally while teaching a skill. So while doing this, I know the video is muted, but started with least prompting verbal. So turn the water on. Wow, you're doing amazing. Now wet your hands. Oh, you're so cool. Now let's turn the water off. There you go. That's a perfect example of how each step is reinforced through verbal praise. The advantages of total task chaining can be reinforcement is giving after each step of the chain is performed. So whatever is really reinforcing for this client. So that might be an edible, that might be bubbles, whatever. The disadvantages can be, it can be very complex, and this chaining style does not require mastery before adding additional steps into the chain. So honestly, if your client is severe when it comes to learning new skills, this may not be the right one for you. So here is total task training in action. I'm verbally prompting and then pointing to each step for the client to complete independently. As you can see, the client is successfully completing each step on their own. Light physical prompting is being used as needed. All right, and to wrap it up, I will just be going over some tips for chaining. And the main one is just to be flexible. Be prepared to make changes since everyone's different. What works for one person may not work for the other. Also, be patient. One step may be way quicker to learn for the learner than the other steps. Yeah, so here's my references, and thank you all for tuning in.